everyone. Hello. This is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, I speak weekly with fascinating people in tech. And my speakers are influencers, leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, fantastic talent that all those people, they're so generous with their time to contribute and talk to us about trends and interesting technologies to watch. Today here with us, Danilo McGarry. Hello, Danilo. How are you?
Hey, Irene, how's it going? Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for your time, because we want to talk about automation trends. You are automation and AI leader and global influencer, and you're very busy with clients every day. So who, if not you, will tell us about automation trends to watch this year and beyond? Could we begin with technology? I mean, we talk about process automation, we talk about digital transformation every day now. How does it look from your side of the business where you are?
Well, for sure, this is a topic that's been building up a lot of momentum throughout the years, especially the last 3 or 4 years. We're coming to a space now where it's becoming quite massively adopted. So the trend that's going to be continuing this year, I think, is companies that haven't started it yet are going to really accelerate their adoption of automation, especially starting with just very simple automation like RPA. And that will accelerate exponentially throughout this year. This is the year of adoption, especially for mass adoption, whereas last year and the year before was adoption by the market leaders, by blue chips especially. So this adoption will take shape for a number of reasons. And the reason why it didn't happen before is because one, the amount of people in the market, so talent wasn't readily available. From kind of end of last year, this year onwards, when people have started to reskill, they started to refocus their careers to the new hot topics that are coming up, such as automation. There's a lot more available talent this year than there was last year. And the talent that did come into the space 2 or 3 years ago, they're more mature, they have a few more battle scars, so they kind of know what they're doing now. So that experienced market in terms of talent is going to be available as well. So now that companies have gone through this scarce of COVID environment where people can work from anywhere, the locations from which you can hire these talents has broadened. So companies have a more open mind in terms of where they can hire these people from, and that has also allowed more people to become readily available. So people are one of the most important things also in automation, funnily enough, even though that's a bit of a funny contradiction. You do need people to develop automations and to make automation programs. So adoption can finally happen now because of these two factors I just mentioned. So mass adoption, that's one trend. The other trend is for those companies who are blue chips, who have been doing this for a couple of years, they're finally starting to figure out how to marry up simple automation with AI. So the two worlds will finally collide, where the process-orientated people who do more simple automation like RPA will finally start being put under the same leadership and the same umbrella as the folks who build algorithms and do machine learning and deep learning, etc. They will be asked to join forces in order to combine something that will make hyper-automation, intelligent automation. There's different definitions for it. But the two capabilities will finally start coming together under one roof, thinking together, working for the same business under the same teams. So that's going to be very interesting. Another reason why that's happening is also because of the whole COVID environment. Companies have been reducing their cost base, and having two separate teams which are effectively trying to make the business more efficient doesn't make sense. It's doubling up on costs. So by cost cutting, bringing the teams together who are doing similar things, is also forcing that conversation, forcing the topic of the marriage between simple and complicated automation. So that will happen, but mostly at blue chip level, companies who have been doing this for a couple of years. The other trend is also that the same way how RPA has become more off the shelf, you can just go buy it and plug it in and start training and using it. The same is starting to happen on the AI side of the world. There's a lot of very good AI tools nowadays where you can take it off the shelf, put it into your company, and you don't need data scientists. You don't need people who are AI engineers, Python experts in order to build the algorithms that you need for your business. You can do it through very simple tagging, through very easy to use interfaces. So just normal business people can start using these tools. And that's actually a very big thing because finally AI has become more approachable. The normal folks now have the capability of working with AI tools without needing to have that technical background.
And this is major. This is democratization of AI, right?
Exactly,
you don't need
exactly.
a PhD on board to make changes to your business application. This is fantastic. Can we go deeper on this topic, please? Because in 2020, we spoke a lot about how do we make AI available to broader set, not even engineers, but business people mostly. So
Yeah.
are there any good examples you saw where companies where it's really easy to adapt and it's low-hanging fruit that they can reach out for? Mm-hmm.
So there's been a lot of complicated cases where before you need a lot of data scientists. So things like, if you're an insurance company and you want to find, the prediction of when the next sick person will come by, you need to have, before you needed to have a lot of data scientists and statisticians and mathematicians to come together to put this together. Nowadays, you can put that model together with just simple business people plugging in data from the existing systems that they have. Other things which are more complicated, such as taking information out of highly unstructured documents. Before, you need to have a bunch of data scientists, a bunch of people with PhDs, and you have to look at standard deviation and things like that. Nowadays, you can just have normal business people that can tag those documents and teach the robot what to look for in these highly unstructured documents. There are many examples. So it's all about ease of use, right? A lot of these AI tools have become easier to use. The interface has been tailored to people who are not technical. Like you said, this is actually quite huge. And this is the year where it's finally started to happen at mass scale, where a lot of the AI companies who are bringing these solutions to the table have thought about, okay, we need to make this approachable to the normal Joe, the normal Jane in the market. Anybody should be able to use this tool, not just very skilled people.
Wonderful. What have you seen on the front end of customer experience? Because we're all talking about seamless operations, right? Back end and front end. So any breakthroughs you've seen past year and this year, maybe?
I think the breakthroughs, now that the models and the approach on how to build machine learning models are, they're quite well known now. There's not many people that hold the secret key to any of these things. It's the approach is pretty much accepted, and it's pretty much the same for any company trying to build AI models. I think companies have started to focus on the front end. It's really about how to make it more user friendly, how to have a user interface. Previously these companies never even had a proper user interface. It was just about the technical aspects of it, so a data scientist can use it and code everything in. It's really the user interface, the front end, that has really changed and revolutionized over the past 12 months. And that will continue to proliferate over the next year or so. So it will almost become the norm now. So if you have an AI tool which is looking at building some sort of algorithm, it must have a user-friendly interface. Otherwise, it's not going to do well in the market. And I've also seen another trend as well, which is happening, which I did forget, is tools that bring everything together. So what I mean by that is, you have, let's say if you're a very big bank and you have many different departments, many different leaders, and they've all chosen different automation companies, different AI companies to solve various different things that the company needs. But for you to continue on your digital transformation journey, how do you do that when you have 30 different moving parts around you? So a big trend that's really picking up, and it's really quite recent, really the past 6 months or so, is process automation or workflow automation companies. So one that's really impressed me the last 6 months or so is a company called Firestart, who are directly competing with Appian and Bizagi and Nintex and those guys, those kind of Pegasystems, which are pretty big companies. But they've come with a very easy approach. They can basically plug into any automation company. They can plug into any AI company and still provide the business user with that one view of everything that's happening in their workflow. So the issue with a lot of transformation programs was, great, we have all these solutions to make the company more efficient, but how do you still give business users control of what they do every single day? And these tools which are coming into the market thick and fast, they are starting to solve these problems, and they're starting to give companies back control of their very operations, which everybody's been trying to make more efficient. So I think once that also becomes mass adopted, these workflow automation tools, it's going to allow digital transformation to break through a glass ceiling. Whereas, a lot of companies, they start their journey after 2 or 3 years, they kind of reach a point where it stagnates. It can't really find anything else very interesting to automate or to build an algorithm for. And they kind of just sit in that limbo state for a while until they figure out what to do. I think these workflow automation tools, which will give the end-to-end visibility, they're going to allow companies to kind of have more vision, to be able to understand, okay, this is how everything is connected. This are all the things that we haven't touched yet. Let's go and play with that. Let's go and make that parts of the business more efficient. So it's going to allow, I think, this whole market to scale big time. So a very big trend that's new, but coming up thick and fast.
Again, another major one, because when we talk about convergence of technologies, and I'm thinking about enterprise stack at average to, mid-size to large companies, the amount of legacy applications, the amount of new applications, a business user has to absorb and be fluent in. So absolutely, those integrating tools you're talking about, those are really improve the employee's experience, right, to serve customers better.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when I think low code or no code is going to come in. Where I think low code came in at the wrong time. It was too early for its day. I think now is the right time for low code once they're embedded into these integration tools. So for instance, I'm going to give you a practical example because I think people want to know how the stuff works practically. Say I'm a business user and I have a 600-step process that I work on every day. Let's say there's 4 different automation companies that have different bots at different parts of this process for some strange reason, but it happens. I have a script that does part of that process. I have an Excel macro that's part of that process. I have an AI algorithm that's part of that process. How can I possibly, if something is broke along the way, I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs because I don't have the skills to build a robot or to fix a robot. So a tool that's layered on top of that, which is a workflow automation tool, will finally give me the stats and give me the live view of everything that's happening on a day-to-day basis. And then very quickly, I can ping somebody who can fix that bot for me, or I can do it myself if it's built on low code. Then on top of that, if there's something quick that I see that hasn't been automated, but it isn't worth the time from the center of excellence, from the robotics team, I can just go and build it myself with a low-code solution. So, that kind of, I think this is a very good thing for especially people who are worried about losing their jobs, learning about this. Because it finally creates that pathway, that bridge that they can cross from being a simple business user who knows how to copy and paste and do reconciliations and just understand the systems well, to being a business user who is a tech business user hybrid. And this is the workforce of the future. A person who knows how to do processes well, but a person who understands how to use the technology applied to the things that they do every day. So that finally is going to secure the jobs for the people of the future who were once worried that they might lose it because of automation.
Yep, we talk a lot about this topic, of course, exactly, because a lot of people are worried, and this is fantastic pathway, because we talk about upskilling, which is first step, right, to kind of realize technology out there and how do I get those skills. But what you're saying on the job, actually, you don't need to go to college and drop everything and start the new class. You basically, right, you're learning on the job and you're becoming a creator, right? If you're finding this solution, right, with tools that are available to you, you are a creator, you're adding value to the business. So that way you are your human best, right? With your empathy and with your talent, with your unique talent.
Exactly. And it's also it's good news for companies too, because it doesn't mean that they have to have people who are process experts and people who are IT experts. That those two worlds are finally going to come together and collide, where the worker of the future will be a hybrid of those two worlds together.
Fantastic, fantastic. So let's jump into the next 5 years, maybe. Okay, what about this next shiny toy in this horizon? Because what we're talking about is business practice. It's very important. It's critical for businesses. It's not sexy. Okay, most people think about it. It's day-to-day operations, even if it's customer facing. So what's out there that we have not tasted yet in the world of automation and AI? Things that, I don't know, conversational technologies that will bring our smart automation right everywhere. What's next?
So I know 5 years is not a very long time, really. In technology, a lot of things will happen, but these will be more technical things. I think that we're still at the point where companies are understanding how to use automation and AI and RPA. So by the way, when I say automation, I mean RPA and AI together, okay? So it's everything under that umbrella. Companies are still learning how to do it. And adoption is still not, at 100% or 80% even. So really the next 2 years is going to be about adoption, bringing those two worlds together, making these tools more user-friendly, more powerful. I think when we start getting to year 5 plus, so 5+ years, so after 5 years, 5 years further down the line, that's when I think there's going to be a significant amount of technical advances. So things like you were mentioning, bots that can hear us speaking. So we're in a meeting, and as we're discussing things, oh yeah, I'm sure that we can ask Tim to do this, and John to do that, and Sophie to do this, and so the bots will be able to hear this, and if it's simple tasks, they'll be able to do it for us. So when we come out of the meeting, some of those tasks are already done. So for instance, if I'm in a meeting and I agree with somebody, oh yeah, I have to send you those numbers, the results from last week's sales, that's a pretty simple task. So my bot assistant who's listening in should already be able to carry out that operation. Again, another thing that will advance is bots that will manage other bots. So for instance, we all know that processes change every day. Companies are not static. So when you build an automation for a particular process, they do need a bit of maintenance. That's pretty standard today. And that maintenance is done by humans. I think in the future, robots will be able to fix other bots. So by learning how humans fix different bugs in robots, let's say, over time, they will be able to understand those behaviors and implement those fixes themselves. So bots will be self-healing. They'll be able to fix themselves as they go along. They'll be a bit more intelligent than single decision tree bots that we have today. That's one. I think those two things are pretty technically, fantastic. I think they will come. Of course, there will be more interesting things that come into play. So, the use of AI and automation in the healthcare industry is going to completely, extrapolate over these next 5-10 years. It's going to become a real aid to a doctor or a general practitioner, of what to look for in a person. They're almost not going to be having to think too much in terms of referring people to specialists. When the person gives their symptoms and the test results come in, an AI could very easily replace a general practitioner. In the UK, we call them GPs. In the US, there's different names for them. So a general family doctor, I think, is going to start, coming to a point where they're going to need to learn IT, otherwise they're going to become obsolete. Wearables are going to go through the roof. So things like, smart watches, emergency unit teams are in ambulances. They're going to be wearing body cams. Once they come close to the victim who's having problems, they'll be able to facial recognition, understand on their armband, okay, this person is A+ positive blood type. They're allergic to these 5 things. They've been taking these other medicines in the last 5 years. So, integration of advanced automations and AI into everyday life to further augment human life, especially in emergency situations. I think that's going to take off big time.
That's exciting. That's definitely exciting. So how do we react as society? Because still, when we're talking within technical bubble, right, this is all clear. We know the path, fantastic advancements, right, human benefiting from it. What about society? Because it's still, right, as much as we want skills being out there, they're not there. And what is the general thinking around those topics? Mm-hmm.
So I don't have this thinking that, one day someone's going to click their finger and half the world's going to be out of a job. But I do think that the technology advancements in the blue chip companies, especially the market leaders, are going to adopt this stuff far quicker than anybody else. So that's going to cause a bit of a lagger, situation where companies who are not market leading are going to fall behind. They're going to start losing profitability. They will eventually come to points where even they go bankrupt. Governments, they are today completely behind this. They don't understand any of the stuff and the structural impact it can have on companies. So if I give an example, right, take a step back. Let's say I'm an extremely aggressive company. I want to use automation to the very best of my abilities. After a couple of years, I should be able to roughly automate 30% of what my company does. 30% is a lot. If you have a 200,000 people organization, that's a big number, right? What are those people going to be doing? Either they're going to be taking a new business that comes in, or they're going to have to go and do something else. If you extrapolate that to all of the top 10,000 companies on Earth, that's going to be a lot of people who are going to become obsolete, or then I mean obsolete by the fact that they wouldn't be reskilled or retrained in time to be relevant yet. So those people are going to go out of the market, of the job market. Governments are then going to start having a rising unemployment issue. It won't happen overnight, but it'll be a gradual problem that builds up over time. Then governments are going to be in that situation where, we have a lot of people who are not able to work today because the working market has shifted completely to the IT side of the world. So they're going to have to give those people bursaries, let's say, to reskill. They're going to have to give them tax breaks, anything to help them out so they can go into a new course or go into another apprenticeship to learn new skills. How are they going to do that? Where are they going to get that money from? So I've written an article about, how governments one day will start having a robot tax. That's one way. So for companies who have a certain amount of robots that they are in operation every day, they can have a tax for that. And that will be used to give bursaries out to people who can reskill, or for other reskilling programs. So I think corporates are going to gain a lot from this automation story. They're going to eventually, over a couple of years onwards, start saving a lot of money from it and gaining a lot more business. But after a while, when structural changes become very obvious in companies and then in society, they will need to give some of that back to society in order to allow people to reskill, so people become relevant. So that will build up over time. And that's, we're talking also about things like, self-driving cars coming into the market. Taxi drivers who could be out of a job soon as well. Bus drivers, transportation, logistic companies, all of that will change too. It's not just, the financial services industry or just one single industry. It's going to impact every industry. So that will build up over time. It's not going to be doomsday. We're not going to have 30% unemployment globally next year, but I think it will build up to kind of 15 or so percent globally over the next 10 years. By that time, I hope that then governments would have caught up with all of this. The bursaries that they're giving out to people to reskill would have had some positive effect. And then those people will start becoming relevant again to come into the marketplace. And then, that will catch up and go back to normal, and unemployment will go back down to normal rates. So that's how I think things will evolve over the next kind of 10 to 15 years. Governments lagging, and then they'll catch up by providing some sort of bursary or incentives for people to reskill.
And let's spell out again, we kind of touched on it, what kind of work will people do in those times? Because we mentioned business user, super business person, right, who is savvy on tech, as well as business side, right? But what are the professions you see that will explode? Because, like you said, automation requires a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's all going to become about the process. Companies are finally going to ask themselves, what do we actually do on a daily basis? Something that C-level don't ever understand or have the time to see. They're thinking about strategy, but the middle tier management are going to be asked that question: what do we do? How can we do it better? And it's not going to be like Six Sigma and Kaizen days where re-engineering. We're looking at how to restructure the business, do it better. There's going to be a point where that stuff is going to become second nature. It's going to be more about how do we apply technology to what we do every day. how do we empower our current business users to be able to think agnostically between operations and technology? There's a lot of trends, for instance, where companies are, bringing their COO and CTO office together so that they can become one unit to be able to service the business, to make them more efficient. So I think the jobs of the future are going to be, companies who provide job titles, and we can make these up and try to predict them, but they're basically going to be hybrid job titles. So people who understand what they do on a day-to-day basis as a process, but they also understand the IT applications that can go onto that process to make it more efficient. So I think, to keep it very high level, the jobs of the future are going to be people who are the 2.0 version of process reengineering that used to exist in the early 2000s. They're going to be like the hyper reengineering people who are able to do the changes themselves and are able to talk IT and actually apply those IT solutions themselves. Those are the jobs of the future. And of course, you have those ones which can't be automated yet, which are things like people who are, Instagram influencers. There's going to be a lot more. There's different, if you look at different associations, CIPD, other companies that do research on labor markets, there are predictions by 2030, roughly 50% of the workforce in the US and Europe will become freelancers. Mm-hmm. So there is also a shift into that, in that people will become general practitioners of many industries. And basically, because there are so many robotics and so many automations in a company, the few things that humans will end up doing after 20 years from now, it will be tendered out to people to provide as a service. And because they are general people, they understand IT and process well, they'll be able to do that job well. So the whole freelance market is going to come in. That's going to change the structure of how companies, fill roles. And it's going to stop this thing of having full-time employees as well, which is a huge cost to companies as well. So a lot happening there, a lot to unpack in our 30 minutes. But some major changes coming, and major changes in thinking of how companies should be structured and societies should be servicing those companies.
I'm glad we'll be bringing this up, because there are resources, bombarding us from left and right, all these articles and other interviews, other videos. The point is that people want to be people. They want to be human, even in this future. So how do we see that evolving? Because psychologically, right, we are human beings. We haven't changed in how many thousands of years? So we're very complex creatures. So how do we propel into this bright future while not losing our very human, very empathical side?
Well, I think there's two sides to this. I think disasters like COVID and other human disasters that are yet to come, they are going to put a lot of pressure on companies to become more profitable because of extreme losses that happen because of situations like this. So that's going to drive the whole, we need to get better and do better, and we need to evolve. Then you have issues such as, people becoming unemployed, so they have to reskill as well. So I think at some point, and you have this thing of working from home now where, there's really no working hours anymore. You just got to work all the time. So I think your daily life will fuse into working life. It sounds like a horrible thing, but actually it will mean that the jobs that we do in the future won't be so time critical. It would just require us to do them at our leisure, at different times. So it will be a lot more evolving around people's, circumstances. So I think that will happen. I think as well that, as we progress into the future, there's also lots of talk about, the financial system, needing to change from fiat to cryptocurrency, and you have genomics as well. We have a lot of other technologies which are coming into play over the next 5-10 years. I think, though, it's not just AI that's going to transform the world. It's going to be kind of 4 or 5 major technologies. And how they all come into play is going to be interesting. But I think ultimately, what will happen is, maybe it will take a while. Maybe it'll take 20, 30 years from now. But we will finally be able to be very good at being human again, which is a bit of an oxymoron. But by slowly giving away power to things being automated and being okay with that and not having an anxiety attack over that, and by the structure of societies changing in the way that we receive compensation, we will eventually start understanding that there is power in automating things so that we can have a better life ourselves. And then by having that downtime eventually, by not having to do that constant robotic work that we do today, we will be able to have more time to start answering fundamental questions such as, why are we here? What's the point of my existence, and that kind of thing. That's a bit of a positive outlook on life and how things will play out. But I think eventually once work becomes a second nature thing, it becomes more automated, we will have time to become more human. And I think ultimately the most valuable job on earth, as we have an aging population, will be, how do we take care of our elderly? How do we pay respect to the world that we live in? How do we take care of our environment? And how do we colonize other planets as well? So we will be able to start focusing on much more interesting things after 20, 30 years from now.
Wow, that's something to think about, Danilo. Thank you for sharing these views, because it resonated with me. I'm certain it will resonate with audience. Frankly, right, we're all holding on to automated work that we're doing, or I used to do for many years, right? This is no fun. This is not human, okay? A lot of, processes that not automated, where people put band-aid of people on inefficient practices, okay? So with that, what you said, we will have hopefully some free time to think about how to live better, right? Dedicate more time to live better, which is important. And that's the future. So technology is our friend, not a foe, I think. And let's spread this message around. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. It will take time to get there, but I think eventually, it might take 30 years, it might take longer, but I think eventually we'll start seeing it as the ultimate answer for us to be able to live better lives.
Absolutely. And you know what? Young people who are entering workforce right now, they already have different demands in terms of conditions they're willing to work in, in terms of their flexibility in life and everything. They're already different people. So that's good. Yeah. So technology will...
One of the reasons why I say this is because of that as well, that generation difference between millennials, Generation Z, etc. They don't want to be doing robotic work. They want to be out and exploring. So I think it's because of them and eventually on their successors that this will come to fruition, that they will start using this in order to automate work as much as possible so that we can do more human things. Whereas in the past, I think if you use different generations, that mentality of of course you have to have pride in your work always, but the pride of actually doing things with your bare hands, that's the old mentality of the current leaders that we have today in a lot of companies, not all of them. But once the new generations come into power at C-level, etc., I think that mentality will shift, and then we will start seeing the effects of technology on the robotic work that we do today in order to become more human again.
Fantastic. So I encourage our audience to follow Danilo, who is a huge influencer, huge global mind, sharing the information on the topic we just talked about. Follow SaugaTalks, because we do talk with fascinating people in tech. And what most importantly, keep being human. Thank you, Danilo, so very much.